You ever move somewhere new, thinking it's a fresh start, only to realize you've stepped into a nightmare?
Yeah.
That was me. The place looked perfect at first. Neat lawns, quiet streets, friendly faces. A little too perfect. You know the type, cookie-cutter homes, mailboxes standing at equal distances, neighbors waving just to keep up appearances. I had just settled in with my best friend, Max. My golden retriever, my shadow, my partner in crime. He'd been with me through law school, late-night research, even my toughest court battles. This wasn't just a pet. He was family. And in any normal neighborhood, that wouldn't be a problem. But I had unknowingly walked into the domain of Karen. Now, I've dealt with tough opponents in courtrooms, but this woman, she was something else. HOA president. Self-appointed ruler. The type who policed how many flowers you had in your front yard. You know the type, always lurking, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning for the smallest violation, so she could swoop in and flex her authority. I didn't even see it coming. One morning, I'm sipping coffee on my porch, watching Max do what dogs do, sniffing every inch of grass like it holds the secrets of the universe. That's when I hear it. Ahem. I look up, and there she is, the embodiment of every HOA horror story. Tightly curled hair, oversized sunglasses, and a smug expression that screamed, "I'm about to ruin your day." "Excuse me," she starts, tilting her head like a disappointed teacher. "You do realize large breeds aren't allowed in this community, correct?" I blink. "Excuse me?" She gestures toward Max like he's some kind of feral beast. "Dogs over 50 pounds are a violation of HOA policy." I stare at her, half expecting her to laugh. She doesn't. I set my coffee down. I read the bylaws before moving in. There's no size restriction. Karen smiles, the kind of smile that isn't friendly. The kind that means trouble. "Well, we just updated the rules last month." I sent out emails. I pull out my phone, checking my inbox. Nothing. I narrow my eyes. I didn't get anything. "Oh, well, maybe you should check your spam folder." She crosses her arms, as if that settles it. "Regardless, I suggest you find a solution, because rules are rules." At that moment, it clicks. This isn't about rules. It's not about policies. This is personal. She had decided I was her next target. Maybe it was because I was new. Maybe because I hadn't joined the neighborhood book club or whatever ridiculous social hierarchy she had in place. Maybe because Max dared to exist. I glance down at him. His tail wags. He doesn't know we've just been thrown into battle. I take a breath. You can't just change policies on a whim and enforce them without notice. Karen raises an eyebrow. Actually, the HOA board can. And we did. Oh, she was enjoying this. Power trips like hers don't come from logic. They come from control. She takes out a neatly folded paper from her purse, like she had planned this interaction in advance, and hands it to me. "Consider this your official notice," she says. "You have 1 week to remove the animal before fines begin." I watch her walk away, her victory all but solidified in her mind. But here's the thing about me. I don't just back down. Especially not when something's unfair. Especially not when I know the law better than they do. I unfold the letter, scanning for loopholes, contradictions, anything that doesn't add up. And within seconds, I spot it. Karen has no idea who she's dealing with. She thinks she can intimidate me into submission. She has no clue what's coming. Game on. Ah, great. A letter from the almighty HOA. Let me guess, it's another petty complaint. But as I skim through the neatly typed threats, my jaw tightens. This isn't just a warning. They're demanding I get rid of Max, or face crushing fines and legal action. $500 per day? Are they out of their minds? Cut to me pacing in my living room, rereading the letter, disbelief turning to anger. I knew Karen had it out for me, but this is war. Let's see. Pet policy, leash requirements, waste disposal. But wait, where's the part about big dogs being banned? I double-check, then triple-check. It's not there. They made this rule up. There's no actual restriction on dog size. So why is Max suddenly a problem? Leans back in the chair, exhaling sharply. Oh, I know why. This isn't about rules. This is about control. And Karen? She's enjoying every second of it. Cut to the neighborhood park. I walk Max, leash in hand, when Karen struts up, her usual smirk in place. Karen mocking concern. Did you get our notice? I know it's hard to part with a pet, but rules are rules. I hold her gaze, voice calm but firm. Me? Actually, I did read it. And I also read the bylaws. Nowhere does it say large dogs are banned. Karen's smug expression falters for half a second before she recovers. Karen, haughty. The board has the right to enforce community standards. And frankly, your dog intimidates people. Not everyone feels safe around big animals. I gesture around us. Several neighbors are walking their own large dogs. A German Shepherd, a Labrador, even a Great Dane. Me mocking her tone. Funny. No one seems to be filing complaints about their dogs. Karen, voice sharpening. This isn't about them. It's about you. If you don't comply, the fines will start immediately. And trust me, they add up fast. She spins on her heel, leaving me seething. Yeah, Karen. Let's see who gets the last word. Cut to the neighborhood park. I walk Max, leash in hand, when Karen struts up, her usual smirk in place. Karen mocking concern. Did you get our notice? I know it's hard to part with a pet, but rules are rules. I hold her gaze, voice calm but firm. Me? Actually, I did read it. And I also read the bylaws. Nowhere does it say large dogs are banned. Karen's smug expression falters for half a second before she recovers. Karen, haughty. The board has the right to enforce community standards. And frankly, your dog intimidates people. Not everyone feels safe around big animals. I gesture around us. Several neighbors are walking their own large dogs. A German Shepherd, a Labrador, even a Great Dane. Me mocking her tone. Funny. No one seems to be filing complaints about their dogs. Karen, voice sharpening. This isn't about them. It's about you. If you don't comply, the fines will start immediately. And trust me, they add up fast. She spins on her heel, leaving me seething. Yeah, Karen. Let's see who gets the last word. Cut to me talking to my neighbors. A few shake their heads in frustration, while others avoid eye contact, whispering nervously. Neighbor 1 whispering. You're not the first person she's gone after. She does this to anyone who doesn't fall in line. Neighbor 2 nodding in agreement. I'd stand with you, but I can't risk it. Last time someone pushed back, they got fined for lawn violations every single week until they gave up and moved. Neighbor 3 firmly. This isn't right. I'll sign a complaint if you take this to court. I nod, gratitude mixing with frustration. Some are willing to fight. Others, too scared to risk Karen's wrath. Cut to a formal HOA meeting. Karen sits at the head of the table, flanked by her obedient board members. Karen clears throat. The issue of unauthorized pets has been reviewed, and the board has reached a decision. Effective immediately, a fine of $500 per day will be issued until the dog is removed. Gasps ripple through the room. My fist clenches under the table, but I keep my expression neutral. Me leaning forward, voice low and controlled. That's illegal. Karen sweetly. Then sue us. She smirks. The board members chuckle. They think they've won. But oh, they have no idea what's coming. Karen assumed she had the upper hand. She saw herself as the queen of the HOA, barking orders without question. What she didn't realize was that I had spent years tearing apart cases exactly like this. I wasn't just another homeowner she could intimidate. I was an animal rights attorney with a record of taking down corporations for violations far worse than this. I had fought for animals in courtrooms, overturned unfair laws, and exposed unethical practices. Taking on a power-hungry HOA president? That was child's play. The moment Karen smugly informed me that Max had to go, I knew she had made a mistake. But I kept my anger in check, nodding along as she spewed nonsense about bylaws and community standards. If she had any idea who I was, she wouldn't have been so bold. She thought this was over. It hadn't even begun. Once I got home, I pulled out my laptop and started digging. I went straight to the HOA's governing documents. The rules were clear. There were no breed or weight restrictions. Karen had pulled that out of thin air. But that was just the beginning. As I scrolled through, I found discrepancies in amendments, inconsistent language, and bylaws that had never been properly filed. Some sections contradicted state laws. Others were vague enough to be challenged. Then something caught my eye: clause about fines. The HOA was charging penalties far beyond what was legally allowed. They had no authority to issue fees that high. That alone was grounds for legal action. I kept going. Case law, state housing regulations, federal fair housing protections. I lined up every piece of legal ammunition I could find. Karen had no idea she had just started a war with someone who knew how to fight back. Airtight cases needed solid proof. I wasn't about to go into this without undeniable evidence. First, I recorded every interaction with Karen. Her threats, her condescending tone, her repeated insistence that I had no choice but to comply. Every smug remark was now safely stored as an audio file. Next, I talked to neighbors. Many had their own horror stories about her. She had bullied residents into paying bogus fees, harassed people for minor infractions, and selectively enforced rules. Some had even been threatened with foreclosure for unpaid fines. Fines that, as I had already discovered, weren't legal in the first place. I asked them to put everything in writing. Several agreed, providing statements about Karen's pattern of abuse. Then, I turned my attention to financial records. HOA boards were required to keep detailed accounts, and as a homeowner, I had the right to request them. I formally submitted a demand for transparency. If they denied it, that would be another violation. Karen was about to learn that I wasn't just fighting for Max. I was about to expose every dirty little secret she thought was buried. Now that I had proof, it was time to make my move. Step 1. File official complaints. I contacted the State Housing Board, detailing every violation I had uncovered. I backed it up with evidence, audio recordings, statements, and legal precedents proving the HOA was operating outside the law. Step 2. Bring in the media. I sent the story to local news outlets, highlighting the abuse of power, the financial discrepancies, and the illegal pet restrictions. Nothing made HOA boards sweat like public scrutiny. Step 3. Rally the community. I sent an anonymous letter to every homeowner, outlining the illegal practices and warning them about Karen's overreach. Many had suspected corruption but didn't know how deep it went. Now they had proof. Step 4. Hit them where it hurts. I sent a cease and desist letter demanding an immediate halt to the fines and a formal retraction of the pet ban. If they refused, they'd be facing a lawsuit, and not just any lawsuit. This would be a class action case with multiple homeowners backing me. The walls were closing in, but Karen had no clue what was coming. Then, something unexpected happened. While reviewing financial reports, I found numbers that didn't add up. HOA fees had increased dramatically over the past 2 years, yet there was no record of major repairs or upgrades. Money was being collected, but where was it going? I kept digging. Vendor payments were suspiciously high. Large sums had been funneled into contracts with vague descriptions. Some payments went to companies that didn't even exist. It was embezzlement. Karen and her cronies had been siphoning funds, using the HOA as their personal bank account. And now, thanks to her ego, I had the smoking gun. She thought banning my dog was her biggest victory. It was about to be the reason she lost everything. I knew Karen was power-hungry, but she had no idea she had just picked a fight she couldn't win. Her little game of intimidation, that was about to come crashing down hard. Armed with solid evidence, my legal team wasted no time. Documents detailing illegal amendments, financial inconsistencies, and shady transactions were meticulously compiled. It was all there: hidden fees, unauthorized fund usage, and blatant discrimination. The community had been milked dry, and now, everyone was about to find out. Public exposure, the bombshell drops. I didn't need to go straight to court. No, this required a bigger stage. Anonymously, I sent the findings to local news outlets, homeowner advocacy groups, and even a few influential bloggers who specialized in HOA horror stories. It didn't take long. Within 24 hours, the internet was buzzing. Emails flooded the HOA board's inbox. Angry residents knocked on my door, demanding to know if what they were reading was true. The very people Karen thought she controlled? They were now sharpening their pitchforks. Figuratively speaking, of course. Karen's panic mode. The 911 call backfires. But Karen? She was unraveling. Desperate to regain control, she pulled her most ridiculous stunt yet. One evening, as I walked Max, she stormed toward me, phone in hand, eyes wild. "You think you can get away with this?" she hissed, pressing record. I barely got a word in before she dialed 911. With exaggerated gasps, she painted a dramatic picture. "I'm being harassed. He's threatening me. I feel unsafe." Theatrics at its finest. The officers arrived, took one look at me, calm, standing on my own property, and then at Karen, flailing, screeching nonsense, and knew exactly what was going on. I didn't even have to explain. My hands rested casually in my pockets as she desperately pointed at me. "Ma'am, do you have any evidence?" one officer asked, clearly unimpressed. Her face paled. Evidence? She had none. I, on the other hand, had everything: emails, video proof of her harassment, and even footage of her yelling at other residents. "You might want to stop wasting emergency resources," the officer added before leaving her sputtering on the sidewalk. That was the beginning of the end for her. State investigation. The HOA's skeletons come crashing out. With the community up in arms and the media catching wind, the state had no choice but to step in. An official investigation was launched into the HOA's operations. Auditors started sifting through financial records, uncovering misplaced funds, inflated invoices, and fees that had no legal standing. Karen tried to keep up her act, but even the rest of the board members were jumping ship, refusing to take the fall with her. Some even turned over additional evidence just to distance themselves. The worst part? Turns out, Karen had been pocketing a chunk of the illegal fines she had so graciously imposed. That little HOA slush fund she thought no one would question? Yeah, it was all coming to light. Residents revolt. The emergency meeting turns ugly. With nowhere to hide, Karen was forced to call an emergency meeting. She thought she could spin the narrative, claim she was being targeted unfairly, maybe even guilt-trip a few people. It didn't work. The second she stepped up to speak, furious homeowners erupted. "You lied to us," one man shouted. "Where's our money, Karen?" another yelled. "We want you out," someone else roared. It was chaos. She tried to talk over them, but the room had turned against her. Those who once feared speaking up were now demanding resignations, refunds, and answers. She stammered, tried to shift blame. "It was a misunderstanding. The board approved it. This is just an attack." But no one was buying it. By the time the meeting ended, the decision was clear. Karen was done. Final move, the lawsuit that ends it all. But I wasn't finished. No, not yet. With all the evidence compiled, I officially filed a lawsuit. Harassment, emotional distress, and illegal fines. Each charge meticulously documented. She thought she could bully me into submission, but now, she was the one drowning in legal trouble. Her funds were frozen, legal fees piling up. The HOA, desperate to save face, immediately disbanded the board and placed new leadership in charge. Policies were rewritten, illegal fines refunded, and Max? He was never a problem again. As for Karen, let's just say she wasn't in the neighborhood much longer. Karma doesn't forget. And this time, it hit her like a freight train. Karen thought she had power. She believed she could intimidate, manipulate, and control everything around her. But she never expected the walls to come crashing down so fast. The moment the state investigators stepped in, things unraveled at lightning speed. It started with the financial records, something Karen never thought anyone would dare to scrutinize. What they found: missing funds, unauthorized expenses, and blatant misuse of homeowner fees. Every illegal charge, every unexplained transaction. It was all there, laid bare for everyone to see. Residents, once afraid to speak, were now furious. They wanted answers. They wanted justice. At the emergency meeting, Voices clashed in heated arguments. Some demanded Karen's resignation on the spot. Others called for a full audit. But the loudest demand? Criminal charges. And then she panicked. For the first time, the smug arrogance disappeared. She stammered, blamed the treasurer, blamed the accountant. Anyone but herself. But the paperwork didn't lie. Her name was all over those transactions. HOA dues funneled into personal vacations, expensive dinners, and who knows what else. The board, once her loyal puppets, scrambled to distance themselves. "We had no idea," they insisted. "We trusted her." Trust, however, wasn't enough to erase the damage. The entire leadership was forced out, every member replaced by a new committee determined to fix what Karen had broken. The first thing they did? Throw out every ridiculous rule she had put in place, including the so-called pet policy. Max was officially welcome, but that wasn't the end. A lawsuit hit Karen next. Not just from me, but from multiple residents she had fined unfairly over the years. A class action case against her and the former board. Fraud, embezzlement, harassment. The charges stacked up like a house of cards in a storm. She tried to fight, of course. She always had an excuse, a way to twist the story. And then came court. She walked in, head high, acting like the victim. Tears welled up at just the right moment. She rambled about stress, about misunderstandings, about how she only wanted what was best for the community. She painted herself as the hero, a selfless leader who had been wrongfully accused. The judge? Unmoved. And when my turn came, I didn't hold back. Every violation, every shady transaction, every threat she had thrown my way, I laid it all out, piece by piece. The recorded conversations, the documents she had forged, the testimonies from neighbors too scared to speak before. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Karen shrank under the weight of her own actions, her carefully crafted facade crumbling with each undeniable fact. The ruling was swift. Fines, legal penalties, restitution. She owed thousands to the people she had wronged. And the final nail in the coffin? A permanent ban from ever holding an HOA position again. When she walked out, there was no victory in her step. No smug expression. Just a woman who had lost everything she thought she controlled. As for me, Max and I enjoyed a quiet evening on our porch, watching the sunset over a neighborhood finally free from her tyranny. Justice had been served. And the best part? She had done it to herself. Karen's world crumbles faster than she ever imagined. The HOA board, now under legal scrutiny, holds an emergency meeting. Furious homeowners demand answers. Faces that once admired her now glare with contempt. She tries to regain control, spitting excuses about misunderstandings and technical errors. But no one's buying it. A decisive vote is cast. Karen is officially removed from her position. And not just that. A lifetime ban ensures she'll never hold authority in any HOA again. The woman who thrived on controlling others is now powerless. She storms out, her once commanding presence reduced to a defeated shuffle. But the chaos isn't over yet. Just when everyone thinks the drama has peaked, an unexpected voice rises from the crowd. Paul, one of Karen's closest allies on the board, a man who, up until now, stood beside her, enforcing ridiculous rules without question. But today, his expression is different. Tight-lipped, nervous, maybe even guilty. He steps forward, clearing his throat. "There's something else you all need to know." He begins, his voice wavering. Silence falls. Paul spills everything. How Karen manipulated financial records, funneled HOA funds into her personal expenses, and even forced board members into compliance through intimidation. The entire scheme unravels, uglier than anyone expected. Gasps ripple through the room. A few homeowners murmur in shock. Others shake their heads, muttering about lawsuits. Karen, cornered, tries to deny it. "You can't prove any of that," she snaps. Paul smirks. "Actually, I can." He pulls out a folder, documents, emails, bank statements. Proof. Everything needed to ensure her downfall is permanent. Karen stumbles back as reality crashes in. Her empire of control, built on deception, collapses in front of her eyes. Authorities waste no time. Karen faces multiple charges: embezzlement, fraud, and harassment. The very system she abused now turns against her. For me, the fight isn't just about her downfall. This isn't just one corrupt HOA president. It's a pattern. Too many communities suffer under unchecked power, and it's time to put an end to it. I leverage my legal experience, pushing for a new law preventing HOA overreach. My case, along with countless others, sparks change. It takes months, but the movement grows stronger, forcing officials to take action. The best revenge? Not just taking Karen down, but ensuring no one like her can ever rise again. Weeks later, I stand on my porch, watching Max chase a ball across the yard. His tail wagging, his joy unrestrained. No more threats, no more HOA nonsense. A few neighbors pass by, giving nods of approval. The community feels different now, less fear, more fairness. The toxic control is gone. Then, almost poetically, Karen's house goes up for sale. The very place she ruled from now stands as a reminder of her downfall. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about making sure power is never abused again. I scratch Max behind the ears. "We did it, buddy." He barks, tail wagging furiously, as if he knows. This wasn't just about one bad HOA. It was about standing up for what's right, no matter how powerful the opposition seems. People like Karen thrive because too many let them. But when you know your rights, when you refuse to be intimidated, their power fades. Always fight back. Always hold corrupt authority accountable. Because no one, not a Karen, not an HOA, not anyone, gets to decide what's fair unless we let them. And as for Max, he's staying. Forever.